It might be snowing right now in Minnesota, but that's not going to stop me from talking about my top choices for spring musky baits. With the success of my last video, I thought that it'd be a great opportunity to talk about the baits that I gravitate towards the most in the springtime, so hopefully this is going to help out anybody who is struggling to find baits to use in the spring. Starting off with a no-brainer, a bucktail. Obviously, it's probably the best musky lure on the entire market. And one thing that I'm looking for in the springtime when it comes to a bucktail is something that's smaller. So generally, I'm sticking with a single skirted bucktail. And also, double 8 to double 9 blades is kind of what I stick at. I generally am not going above that. I also am a really big fan of Indiana blades in the early season. A little bit more subtle compared to Colorado blades, and they also are going to pull a lot easier. So if you're starting out musky fishing, an Indiana blade is a great way to cover water and keep your wrists in line. And as an honorable mention to the bucktail category, the Stager 910 by Musky Frenzy is also another one I like to throw a lot. This is a 9 and a number 10 Indiana blade, so bigger profile, but it still fishes much like a smaller bucktail, so it's also something that you can try out. This is probably one of my favorite baits to throw in the early season. Moving on is a bait that I have kind of a love-hate relationship with, and that's a weighted 10-inch Suick. I also run the 9s, but for the sake of the video, I just pulled out a 10. Great bait to find fish. I fish extremely pressured waters, and I know a Suick is a very popular musky bait, so it's probably a bait these fish see a lot, but I have noticed that on the days where I can't find fish, this is a great method for me to locate some fish that I can go back on with a different bait at a later point in the day. I'm also generally running the weighted Suicks, and as you can tell on this one, I did actually drill a hole in the bottom of it, so if I ever want to add weight to it, I can do that. It just adds to the versatility of the Suick. Next is a bait that kind of gets overshadowed by all the walk the dog glide baits on the market right now, but that's a Raptor Sublock 15. I think to most, this is almost like a bass lure compared to a musky lure, but don't let its size fool you. This is probably one of my most productive musky lures I've ever thrown since I've got into this. You can see I have what used to be a pink one, which is now a white because all the paint's chipped off from teeth, and a very sun-faded clown color. It's got a really loud rattle to it. And the other thing is these VMC Sure Set treble hooks on the back end here. It's just got a longer shank on one of those points, so if you get a short strike, you have a better chance at hooking up on one of those fish. And finally, I got like a couple of honorable mentions on the list. I'm going to throw a small topwater on here. So this one in particular is a Lake X Fat Bastard. This is going to be a very condition specific bait, I've noticed. On those really warm days in the early season when, you know, it's calm, it's humid out, a topwater is a great option. Maybe not the greatest choice when it's still a little cold out, but when that water really starts to warm up on those warm days, a topwater is a great bait that you can try. And finally, as a bait that I really haven't thrown in the early season yet, I'm excited to throw this bait. And that's because in Minnesota, generally in the early season, we find a lot of our fish out in open water. And one of my favorite baits in the fall, of course, was the King Daddy Bondi Orba. And this is the junior version, so this is a very versatile rubber bait. You can straight reel it because of the blades on the back. You can pull pause it because of the rubber tail. And you can vertical jig it because it falls very sharp. So if I'm ever out in open water and I mark a fish on my side imaging, I know this is a bait that I can count on to toss out to where I think that fish is. And I know I can count on it falling right on top of that fish. So yeah, those are probably the top baits that I'm going to gravitate towards the most in my early season. If you have your own choices, you can leave them down below in the comments and we can talk musky fishing. But until the next video, I will see you guys very soon.